My name is Cid Palacio. I am an artist and I have the pleasure of calling Madoc my home. I'm now into my 5th year.
Great. And what brought you to Madoc?
I had actually visited Madoc many years ago, and I've always loved the country versus the city. So my dream was always to move. I moved from Toronto, and the dream was to always move to the country. And so I was looking at and had been staying at a cottage in the area when this property that is my home now came on the market. And while I stayed at the cottage, just loved the vibe, the small town vibe. The people are amazing, and decided to put down roots here.
Sorry, that was about 5 years ago?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm celebrating my 5th year this year.
Congratulations. Yeah. So how has moving to the country influenced what you're doing with your art?
Excellent question. I mean, moving to the country has given me, I think, a lot more. It's a more laid back type of atmosphere. Like, I get stressed every time I have to visit Toronto, and that is reflective as well in my art. I think that I allow myself a lot more time to play before getting serious with the work.
And how long have you been serious about the work? When did you start with art?
I started quite accidentally. My grandson asked me, this was about 16 years ago or so, my grandson asked me how to paint a rose, and I never took art in school. So of course, you go to Google and start showing him a video, and there was a suggestion you could order for a kit and anybody could do it. So I ordered the kit for my grandson. Now, this was at a time where I was caring for my mom. She was terminally ill with cancer, so an extremely stressful time. And when the kit arrived and I was teaching or playing with him, if you will, I found myself relaxing and getting lost in the process of moving paint around. And guess what? I'm the one that started using the paint, and I painted almost every day since then. That's how the whole thing started.
So before that, 16 years ago, you wouldn't have considered yourself an artist?
Not in the traditional sense as we know it. I've always, when I look back on my career, I've always been creative. Like I love building something new versus fixing something that already exists. That's always been my nature. And so in some respects, that creativity did manifest itself in the roles that I had over the years. I never really framed it as an artist per se.
Can you talk a little bit? I know you've worked with people going through cancer. And as you say, your genesis as an artist was really there with your mother. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Absolutely. So how, as I've mentioned, when my mom was very sick and I discovered painting, I found, like, I used to get up at 4 a.m. and just paint, not knowing what I was doing, but practicing, okay? And from 4 to 6 in the morning, that would be my time. And I found that extremely relaxing. And so my curiosity, I started investigating, well, how does, creativity and art, how does it relate to helping people that are going through difficult times? And especially because I was so involved in the cancer realm at the time. So of course I thought of people living with cancer, which, by the way, it's not just the patient. The family, the care provider, they're living through that as well. And so 2 years after my mom passed away, I formed a charity in Toronto called Art for Cancer Foundation. We were operated for 10 years, and we basically offered free painting workshops for people living with cancer. And so Princess Margaret Hospital sent us a lot of referrals. It wasn't art therapy because, people that are going through cancer, they're therapied out. And that was the research that we got. And this was already very big in Europe, but in North America, I think we were the first charity focused strictly on creative programs for people with cancer. And the feedback was, I mean, they would come in here, and it was mostly women, but we did have the odd male. But they would be there for 3 hours in a workshop. Most of them having picked up a paintbrush for the first time at our workshops. And really just to see the joy where they would mention, for 3 hours, I was in another world and I absolutely forgot about my cancer. And that was kind of what we're trying to do, was to help them, cope a little bit better, if you will. So it was a bittersweet experience, in as much that it was wonderful to be able to bring that kind of joy. But over the years, you get to know people, and you've got a lot of repeat people, and you lose a lot of people. It's just like losing friends. It was stressful as well, but rewarding at the same time.
Let's talk about your art that you do.
Okay.
The painting that you do. What's your medium?
So the painting that I do currently, because I tried everything. When you start out, you try everything and it takes years to really figure out, well, what is it that's my voice? What is it that I like to focus on? I tried your typical florals, your landscapes. I painted each of my family members, disgraced their faces, but I did it, here's a portrait for them. So you kind of try everything. And then when I started, must have been probably 8 or 9 years ago, really starting to learn about abstract art, which is what I do. And I paint in acrylics and what I call mixed media, so that I will often bring other mediums into it, like collage, oil pastels, inks, into the whole mix. But what I do is more specifically called non-representational abstract, which means it's not anything specific. And I'd like to say that my paintings are not about telling you a story, but they're more about helping you find and feel your own story within it. And abstract non-representation differs from your typical abstract, where it's almost like a blurry, like you could have an abstract vase of flowers. You can still know that it's a vase of flowers, just not as detailed. Where non-representational, it's all about shape, line, color, texture. People have a hard time. Not everyone understands what abstract non-representational is. And I often like to explain it and liken it to, you could be listening to an instrumental piece of music that evokes a certain emotion for you. There's no lyrics, so you don't really know what the story is, but just the components, the elements of that piece bring a certain feeling to you. And that's the same thing with non-representational abstract. You're not going to see, there's a landscape and there's a farm and there's a house or whatever it might be. But you are going to be, or not, because it doesn't speak to everyone, drawn to the elements that are in there, the colors, the textures that would speak to you. Does that help?
Absolutely. Actually, you use the word evoke there, and that's what I think when I look at your work. It's evocative. It takes you into a feeling space where it's like, yeah. I could look at that every day for the rest of my life. Or no, that one doesn't do it for me. It doesn't move me the same way, and that's makes it very personal.
Yes, and so the evocative aspect of my art, and thank you for saying that, because it has come up. You really start, like the process that I use. You start. It's all about more of a feeling, right? And it's about how you're feeling. I'm energized by color, as you can see.
Yes.
From this piece that has its own story. I'm energized by color and by shape, but and why abstract and why the type of abstract that I do, I love starting with a blank canvas. I love the fact that it is uncharted territory. I'm about to take the first step into that canvas. I have no idea where I'm going, so I don't necessarily start with a preconceived idea of where I want to end up. And I just let the marks that are being done guide what is the next mark or what is the next color that I'm going to do, what's the next shape. One leads on to the other. It's a process that involves a number of layers. So I usually have 2 to 3 paintings going on at the same time because I'm waiting for paint to dry. The old saying, literally waiting for paint to dry before I can go on to the next stage. But the first stages are pure joy and play. You're not serious. You're not thinking about the finished piece and the elements. It really is about just playing my favorite music on and just getting into it. The final stages, which are what I call the dress-up stage, is really when you have to think about the elements of art. I mean, the elements of art still have to be present in that piece. So when you're doing your final layers, you're already thinking about the composition that you want to use and your focal point and all of the other components.
We're also sitting in your gallery. Well, we're sitting in the basement of your gallery,
Right.
which is your studio.
Right.
But upstairs is a beautiful gallery.
Yeah, I was, the building that we're in, which is an old carriage house built in the late 1800s, was one of the many components that attracted me to this particular property because I envisioned, I'm very fortunate that I have this large studio because when you do mixed media, you tend to keep a lot of different stuff that I can keep all of that. And I envisioned the upstairs at one point because we were in lockdown due to COVID. But my dream was one day, maybe I can open an art gallery upstairs. And so 2 years ago, that's exactly what we did. And it was an opportunity to bring visibility to some of the wonderful local talent that we have. So I showcase my art, but also a number of artists. We had in 2024, 17 artists, and we're about to add a few more this year. So
Fantastic.
it's been very enjoyable to do that as well.
The other thing you've done on your property is outdoor art shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually a component of, or an extension of what we do with the gallery, where we invite not only the artists that are represented in the gallery, but we also invite a number of other local artists and artisans to showcase their creations. We usually do it in August, but this year it might be September. It might be the beginning of September, so that it's not as hot. It was very well attended last year. It was lovely to see the diversity of the creativity in the area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've got the perfect property for it, don't you think?
Yeah. There's lots of space.
Yeah.
And tents can go up, and people can just have an enjoyable day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love teaching, and I love creating, and so in order to teach, I have to create the workshop, and I love that aspect of it. And I love to see, and I especially love it when we've had a number of people come that have never picked up a paintbrush, and this is the first time. And to be able to see the joy on their faces when they go home with a finished painting after 3 hours, I love that aspect of it. And with each teaching workshop that I do, it also becomes a learning for me. Like, not only do I teach, but I learn from it as well. Mm-hmm. So it becomes very gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start out, and then you start, doing little paintings, and then you have a little sale, and then your family wants to be supportive, and they come in and they buy something, which is really nice of them. But and you appreciate that. But when you feel that you've actually sold a painting is when you sell something to a total stranger. That is, and I felt elated when I sold. It was a larger painting, and I sold it to a doctor in Toronto, and he came. This was within maybe 3 years of starting to paint, and he liked the painting and he bought it. And that is fulfilling, to do that, because it's a total stranger. They don't owe you any favors or anything. They just liked it and bought it.
So tell us about this piece behind you.
So this piece, when I mentioned that I often don't know where I'm going to end up, this one was a little bit more intentional. I called it my grandmother's quilt, and it was really inspired by my grandmother, who's now passed, used to make lots of quilts back in Portugal, where I was born. And and I still have some of her quilts. And I remember the joy of, when I looked at her quilts, like she always used leftover material. And so the colors here, in addition to the fact that I love bright colors, but this one is really lots of bright colors, but this particular quilt had the checkered pants that my mom had made. My mom was a dressmaker, and it was the very first pair of pants that I owned ever, and I was 11 years old. So it had the checkered pants. It had an orange wool sweater, the very first sweater that I owned that was store-bought. Again, my mom made a lot of our clothes. It had the color of our Sunday dresses. It brings me back memories as well. So I've got some blues in here and greens. The island that I was born in is very green and luscious, so that you'll see some of that, and then the blue of the ocean and the sky. And that's what that was what inspired me to put together this particular painting. So, and by the way, this painting is taller than I am. I don't know, somehow lately I seem to really enjoy big paintings, and I figured I might as well do them now while I can still lift them. Eventually I probably won't be able to, but right now, big paintings, love them.
And you said this one was
It's actually
meant to go horizontally?
Yeah, well, and the beauty about non-representational is this one can actually you could hang it up 4 different ways. And you still, because if it's a well-constructed abstract, you can hang it up in more than one way. There's no right side up. But my initial intent was that it would be more landscape. That's how I built it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for me, if creating, it gives me joy. When I'm away, I will take a little kit with me, and I paint every day. Smaller pieces, but it's a need. It's almost like the air that you breathe, and you need that. And so it just brings me great joy.
Mm.